General Hospital, GH. Spoilers hint that Michael Corinthos, Rory Gibson, may be forced to break Jacinda Bracken's, Paige Herschel, heart. Will Willow Keynes, Caitlin McMullen, dossier lead to a crushing split? In the February 2nd episode, Willow presented Alexis Davis, Nancy Lee Grahn, with a file containing Jacinda's criminal history. Jacinda apparently had a string of arrests before she came to Port Charles, so Willow didn't think a judge would want her children around a dangerous escort. Willow pushed Alexis to take the dossier when she blackmailed her into accepting her family court case. Alexis reluctantly agreed to represent Willow, but she rejected the file and insisted on doing things her way. However, it's tough to believe GH writers would introduce a dossier like this and just let it go to waste. This file is bound to be important, especially after the way Willow gloated to Jacinda later and acted like Jacinda was helping her get her children back. It looks like Willow and Michael will at least try to compromise before the week of February 2nd to 6th winds down. During negotiations, Willow could easily insist she doesn't want her kids around Jacinda and make it a sticking point. In other words, Willow might only be willing to strike a deal if Michael breaks things off with Jacinda. Otherwise, Willow might argue they're going to take this to court, where she could force Alexis to use the dossier whether her attorney likes it or not. Michael already has Drew Kane, Cameron Matheson, shooter suspicions swirling around him, so he doesn't need to be dating a criminal escort on top of that. It won't be a good look if Michael and Willow ultimately go before a judge. Of course, it's entirely possible that Willow and Michael will indeed have to head back to court if they can't reach an agreement. There's no guarantee this compromise will pan out in the end. Regardless, Willow may play hardball on this Jacinda issue and lead to Michael mulling over the damage his relationship could do. Michael has to put Wiley Corinthos, Byron Weaver, and Amelia Corinthos, Sequoia, and Serenity Mork Mako first, so he may have to dump Jacinda at some point. On the other hand, it's possible Jacinda will sense that she's going to be a problem and remove herself from the equation. Jacinda might break things off herself if she fears her relationship with Michael could cost him too much. Whatever the case, General Hospital spoilers say a difficult romantic blow could be brewing for both Michael and Jacinda, so stay tuned for updates on any breakup news to come. CDL's where you want to be for the hottest General Hospital spoilers, news, and updates, so stop by frequently for more GH info. Willow slid it across Alexis Davis's oak desk like a declaration of war, neat, measured, and cold. The fluorescent lights in the law office hummed above them, and the spring chill outside did nothing to quiet the tension in the room. Alexis, who had always been more machine than mother when she wore her lawyer's face, stared down at the black binder with the same mix of professional curiosity and private chagrin that she reserved for the worst kinds of cases. "You sure about this, Willow?" she asked, her voice even but weary. "There's a line. There's how we practice law, and then there's this." Willow's jaw was a rigid line. Fear had given way to a brittle certainty in her eyes. "I'm sure," she said. "I don't want my kids around someone with a criminal record, Alexis. Not after what I've been through. If I'm going to have any chance of getting them back, I need someone who's going to fight. You're the best. Take my case, and take this file." Alexis's fingers hovered over the binder. She could read the desperation as clearly as she could read the fine print. Desperate people often brought desperate evidence. She had dealt with ugly truths in family court before, secrets, lies, public spectacle turned into private ruin, but this felt like a trap. "You're asking me to cross a line," she said finally. "I represent families. I represent clients, Willow, but I don't manufacture cases. I'm not going to use this unless it's lawful and ethical." You took the case, Alexis, Willow replied. You don't get to do this halfway. Michael's not going to stand in the way. Alexis closed the binder, set it gently to one side, and looked at Willow in a way that felt old, almost maternal.
I'll do my job.
But I do it my way. Outside, the city pressed on. Wintry wind, taxi horns, the faint smell of coffee from a cafe 2 blocks over. Inside, the room felt like a battlefield where rules still mattered. Willow collected herself, but not before she allowed one small, vicious smile. That file isn't going anywhere, she said. Not if I can help it. Michael Corinthos had once been a man whose life was divided into tidy compartments: family, law, duty. He had learned, painfully, that those compartments could shatter. He carried the past like armor, and sometimes the armor chipped into guilt. When he met Jacinda Bracken, when her laugh unexpectedly softened him and her hands steadied the parts of him that were forever twitching on guard, he felt like something fragile and complicated had found purchase on an old, scarred heart. But the world he lived in did not care for fragile things. He got Alexis's message late that afternoon. Need to talk. Willow, bring Wiley. Wiley's small, impatient voice came through the phone when Michael told him to pack a jacket. Is Jacinda coming? He asked. Michael hesitated. In the end, he lied with kindness. She's at a friend's house, buddy. Come with me. At the courthouse, they waited in a small, sterile room with a coffee machine that always seemed to be out of service. Willow sat with the dossier on her lap like a talisman. Michael felt its presence the moment he entered. It was as if paper had become a weapon. Michael, Willow said. Her voice was caught between triumph and sorrow. I didn't want to do this, but I will do whatever it takes to get my kids back. Michael lifted his hands placatingly. Willow, you know I want what's best for everyone. But you're talking about Jacinda. She's been a good person. She's been kind to my kids. Willow's smile was flat. That's not the point. That's never the point when it comes to family court. Judges don't look at kindness. They look at records. They look at red flags. Michael felt his palms grow damp. He had grown used to the way moral calculus at times demanded impossible choices. We can work this out, Willow, he said softly. We can come to an agreement without humiliating anyone. You can break it off, she said suddenly, the words wrenched out of her like a plea dressed as practice. Or this goes to court, and Alexis will use everything in that file. I'm telling you now, Michael. If you want custody and want to be the adult in this room, you know what you have to do. The thought of telling Jacinda, of stripping away the fragile hope they'd built, was like swallowing broken glass. Michael looked at Wiley, who was fidgeting with a small toy car, trying to make sense of adult shapes and words. He thought of Amelia, of how the Mork-Mako twins did not need more legal theater in their lives. He had been shot in the past, had walked through violence and betrayal like a man who had lost pieces of himself along the way. He had fought to rebuild for his children. The calculus became painfully clear, or at least it did to him. Sacrifice was not noble if it left those you loved in ruins. Give me some time, Michael said. Let me talk to Jacinda before anything else happens. Willow nodded, but there was a warning in her eyes that suggested time was a luxury she was no longer willing to offer. Jacinda had a way of turning small spaces into sanctuaries. Michael thought of that as he walked up to the little apartment they'd shared, the place that smelled faintly of coffee and lavender. She answered the door with an expression that broke before it formed. She knew. What's wrong? She asked, stepping back to let him in. He closed the door, and met her gaze. There were a dozen ways to begin, none of them easy. He thought about taking her hands, of holding on, but he knew that grasping would only give the moment the weight of inevitability it needed to break. "Willow has a dossier," he said finally. She gave it to Alexis. Jacinda's face tightened, but not in fear. In some fierce, weary way, she straightened. "I told you about my past," she said. Her voice was steady in a way that made it impossible to pity her without betraying what she wanted. "I've always been honest with you. You were before you came to Port Charles," Michael said. "I know that. But family court isn't about honesty. It's about leverage." She laughed then, abruptly, without humor. "Leverage. You're going to throw leverage at me, Michael? You're going to choose a piece of paper over what we have." "I'm not." He stopped because he didn't know how to say it without sounding like a coward. "I have to think about Wiley and Amelia. I can't put them at risk or in the middle of public scrutiny. If this goes to court, it could hurt you and it could hurt them. I have to protect them." Her face softened in a way that was not weakness. Jacinda had found a hardness to her love that did not seek to dominate, but to preserve. "So what, Michael? You break things off and everyone goes away? You walk away from what makes you happy because someone else is trying to score a point." He wanted to scream that it wasn't that simple. He wanted to tell her that sometimes love required impossible concessions. But the words he needed were thin and brittle. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "That's not enough," she whispered. "Not for this." They stood there, two people tethered by memory and softened by their regrets, and the gap between them felt like an ocean. "Maybe I should leave," she said suddenly, the decision shaped by the courage they both barely had left. "Maybe I should take a step back. I don't want to be the thing that costs you your kids." Michael's throat closed. "You can't just, Jacinda, you don't have to." She cut him off gently. "I know what this looks like. I can see how it will be used. I came into your life believing I could make it better. I didn't expect this. If stepping away makes things easier for Wiley and Amelia, I'll do it. But I won't let you make the decision alone because I refuse to be discarded to make another person feel safer." There was a bravery in her that made him feel both small and ashamed. She would not be used as a bargaining chip. The idea of breaking her heart by leaving was a cruelty he could not fathom inflicting. Yet the alternative, humiliating public hearings, judges parsing through every misstep of her adolescence, was a slow, unruly violence. "Don't decide because you think it will fix things for me," Michael begged. "Decide because you want to. Because I love you. Because—" Her eyes flashed with an emotion he had never fully deserved. "Because love is supposed to be messy and hard, Michael. Not a contract you sign when you want custody." He didn't know how to argue with that. He didn't know how to make this better without causing more harm somewhere else. It was the worst kind of trap, a moral puzzle with no clear solution. And in the silence, Jacinda made the choice that would protect him in the only way she could. "If it's between me and your family," she said, voice steady, "I choose them.